Good morning, everybody. Our group two today would like to present to you about the topic regarding language and skills in ESP. So first of all, I would like to start off by introducing our group members. Our group members including five. I'll be the first presenter. Then it comes to Hai Yến, Xuân Quỳnh, Kiều Anh, and Hai. And Hai Yến will finish the presentation with her part. Our presentation will be included within five parts, as you can see from the screen. So as the first presenter, I would like to begin with skills. All right, skills. When you think about skills in English, normally we will come up with four skills: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And when it comes to skills in ESP, these terms might sound a little bit different from what you think of. It's still divided into, four main language skills. From there, they are categorized into two types. The first one is called receptive skills, and the second one is called productive skills. So what are they? Receptive skills include reading and listening. It means that you receive the information from the outside, and then you process within maybe your mindset or your brain, whatever, to understand this coming information. In opposite, productive skills means that you need to use the information, your knowledge, and everything within your mind to produce maybe the results. Like, for example, you want to speak, you need to use like vocabulary, grammar structures, and everything to create a sentence so that you can communicate. So receptive skills and productive skills. In short, they can be categorized into passive or active skills, but in ESP, the terms are receptive and productive. Now, how to select skills? Skills in ESP is selected based on the learner's need. And there's one term or one phrase that we need to keep in mind here, which is the view of skill or the view of construct. So what does it mean? I would like to give you guys an example so that you can understand better. Let's say I want to teach listening comprehension. But what do I mean by listening? Right? Listening, there are so many ways to teach listening. The most popular way is actually called top-down processing. Top-down processing, it means that the learners need to understand the small details and then combine them all together to understand the main ideas. Meanwhile, if you want to teach another type of listening, it is called bottom-up processing. Bottom-up processing, it means that I use my knowledge, I use my information that I know before, try to guess the general ideas, and then I can understand what the speaker says. I don't need to pay attention to the small details. So that means that the view of construct is actually the smaller criteria or sub-skills in each big skill. Like we have listening. In listening, we have top-down, we have bottom-up. Same to writing. Writing, you have like product approach or process approach. And I will explain further in the following slides. So different contexts would require different skills. Different contexts in ESP, let's say when I want to teach my students to write projects. So the main skill required here should be writing, because everything should be shown on paper. Or if I want to write like research proposals or case studies, everything should be done by writing. But if let's say I'm going to have a presentation like what I am doing right now, speaking skill is always the top priority. Same thing can be done for having questions, asking or responding. So as you can see from the screen, we have different contexts here. Each context would require different skill. It could be writing, it could be speaking. And the same thing to reading and listening as well. So you want to read the books, of course you need to be good at reading. You want to read an abstract, of course you need to read fast. Listening, you are attending a lectures, you need to understand what the presenters are saying. So you need to have a good listening skill. Videos or podcasts are no exceptions. So as you can see, different contexts would require different skills. It depends on what the learners really want. So to finish my part, I would like to give you an example. This is the real world situation. It is an English class that I just taught in the last semester at my school. So the class were included students from electrical and electronic engineering. Their English level was not really good at all, but the objective of the subject was allowing the student to report an accident and they can write an emails to report an accident. So let's say if they want to verbally report an accident, they see an accident, they need to speak to their boss, right? It means that the skill required here should be speaking skill, that they need to report an accident. And in order to be good at speaking, they need to be like good at vocabulary. They need to know what kind of accident is that, and they need to report the time. And then when it comes to writing emails, they need to know the proper form. It could be like professional email communication form. Like they would start with greeting and then the time, the location, the type of accident, and they finish with their names or whatever. So this is like the subject requires the students to be good at speaking and writing. So they need to know how to speak and report the accidents. Meanwhile, writing requires them to know exactly what is the form of the email. So this also brings me to the end of my part, and I would like to continue the presentation with Hai Ian, please.
Okay, so now I will talk about the language in ESP. So what is ESP? Next slide, please. Okay, ESP stands for English for specific purposes, and it differs from EGP, which stands for English for general purposes. And EGP focuses on developing general communicative ability. And in other words, learners study English for overall communication in everyday life. And in contrast, ESP focuses on using English for specific academic or occupational needs. This means learners study English because they need it for a particular purpose, such as work or study. For example, they need English to read manual, write reports, listen to lectures, or give presentation. So the main goal back to the slides. Okay, so the main goal of ESP is to have learners use English to fulfill real needs in real life. Okay, so next I will move to the concept of language in ESP. So in ESP, language can be understood as language for use, not simply language for general proficiency only. Instead, um, this means language is taught for practical purposes, and it is closely connected with what learners need to do in real life. For example, it is connected with their specific purposes, the tasks they need to perform, the text or journal they need to read, uh, write, listen, or speak, and the context in which they use in English. So language in ESP is always related to real communication needs. It is not taught in isolation because learners need to use it in specific situation. So now we move to the first important features of language in ESP is the context specific. So this means the language taught in ESP depends on the learner's real life context. It depends on what they need to do, where they use English, and why they use it. So to decide this, teacher use needs analysis. So first, it helps identify what learners need to do in English. For example, they may need to answer their emails, read technical documents, or talk to customers. Second, it helps identify which Skills are generals. They need, for instance, some learners may need speaking skills, while others may need reading or writing skills. And the last one, it has teachers to decide what language features should be taught. So in ESB, language is always selected based on real needs or not general assumptions. So next, we move to the second important features of language in ESB genre or discourse patterns. So genre is a very important concept in ESB. And according to Mahathir, a genre is a recognizable communicative event with a specific purposes. This means that in different fields, people use different kinds of text for different purposes. For example, a report, a brochure, a business letter, or a manual are different genres. And in ESP, learners need to understand not only vocabulary, but also how language is organized in these genres. And language ESP is shaped by the purpose of communication, the audience, and the discourse patterns. So to use English effectively in a specific field, learner need to know how language works inside the genres of that field. So for example, let's look at an example from tourism. Next slide, please. Okay, so here, a tourism brochure has a clear communicative purpose. Its main purpose is to pursue readers to read a place because of this purpose. The language in tourism brochure is not neutral. It is usually persuasive, persuasive audience oriented, and purpose driven. For example, a brochure may use attractive words or positive description to make a place sound exciting and appealing. And this example shows that in ESP, learners do not only need vocabulary, they also need to understand how language is organized to achieve a specific goal. Okay, so the next example is from business. In business, language changes depending on the context. For example, business meeting can vary by in content, audience, format, and channel. A meeting may be about selling a product or service. It may involve senior managers or collaborators. It may be formal or informal, and it may happen face to face or online. And this shows that business English is highly context specific. And another example is printed sales letter. So these are a business journal studied by B. Berhatier. Their purpose is to initiate business relation and encourage further communication. So in business ESP, learner back to the slides. Okay. So in business ESP, learners need to understand both the language and the communication purpose behind each journal. So the third important features of ESP is specialized vocabulary. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so here, specialized vocabulary is an important language system in ESB because each professional field has its own specific term. So in ESB, word and multi-word units with specific meanings in one field are called terms and terminological units. Some examples of terms are stay, clown, lever, spring. And here are some examples of terminological units. Neural circuit outside break or two independently acting break blocks. So these examples show that ESP learners often need vocabulary that is different from general English. And the last examples come from engineering or especially elevator manual. So in this case, learners need to read technical manual in English. To do this, they must understand specialized vocabulary such as shift, screw, gap, gear, or drive. And they also need to understand terminological units such as the road run in and run outside and the securing voice. And this example shows that engineering ESP involves highly technical and field-specific language. So learners in engineering need not only general English, but also the ability to understand technical terms used in real workplace documents. So now let's move to the next part, integration of language and skills in ASB. And my partner Sun Quỳnh will present to you.
Good evening, everyone. Today I will present about the integrations of language and skills in ESP. I will explain how language and skills are connected, how tasks combine multiple skills, and provide some practical examples. Next slide, please. In ESP, a language is not taught separately as grammar or vocabulary. Instead, it is viewed as communicative competence, a concept famously proposed by Cannell and Swain. This includes not only grammar, but also sociolinguistic and strategies competence. Our goal is to help learners communicate effectively in real-life professional situations. Ở trong phần này thì mình sẽ giải thích tiếng Việt một chút nhé. Sociolinguistic competence nghĩa là năng lực ngôn ngữ xã hội. Đây là một khả năng chọn từ ngữ phù hợp với hoàn cảnh, biết khi nào cần trang trọng, formal hay thân mật, informal. Ví dụ như là cách một bác sĩ dùng từ ngữ chuyên môn khi mà nói với đồng nghiệp, nhưng mà nói với bệnh nhân thì lại cần một cách giải thích đơn giản hơn. Thuật ngữ thứ hai là strategic competence, nghĩa là năng lực chiến lược, là khả năng xoay sở để cuộc giao tiếp không bị gián đoạn, sử dụng các mẹo như là các từ đồng nghĩa khi quên từ chuyên ngành, dùng cử chỉ điệu bộ hoặc là đặt câu hỏi để xác nhận lại thông tin. Ví dụ như khi bạn không biết từ tiếng Anh của một linh kiện máy móc, bạn mô tả hình dáng và chức năng của nó để đối tác vẫn hiểu được ý của bạn. Okay, next slide please. In ESP, skills and content are more important than isolated grammar. Learners do not just study language, but use it to perform tasks such as reading academic texts, writing reports, listening to lectures, and speaking in discussions. Therefore, language is learned through skill. Next slide, please. In real communications, skills are always connected. For example, reading is often followed by writing, and listening is often followed by speaking. Therefore, ESP tasks usually integrate multiple skills instead of teaching them separately. Next slide, please. A common example in EAP means English for academic purpose is reading into writings as researched by Hivelas. In this task, students do not just read for fun. They read academic text to identify key ideas and then use that information to write an assignment. This shows how reading provides the necessary input for the writing process. Next slide, please. Another example is listening and speaking. Students listen to a lecture, take notes, and then discuss the contents or answer questions. This reflects real-life academic communications. Next slide, please. In more complex tasks, students may need to use multiple skills. For example, they listen to a lecture, take notes, read additional materials, write a report, and finally present their ideas. This stimulates real-life situations where multiple skills are required. Next slide, please. ESP tasks have several key features. First, they are based on authentic materials, such as real workplace or academic texts. Second, they reflect real-world situations that learners are likely to encounter. These skills are based on real-world texts and learners' needs in specific contexts. This means that tasks are not designed randomly, but are closely related to what learners actually need in their academic or professional environment. In addition, ESP tasks usually combine multiple skills and focus on completing meaningful tasks. And most importantly, backslash, they follow a focus form approach. Backslash, tưởng, please. This means learners focus on meaningful first, but their attention is briefly drawn to language forms when needed. So learners develop both their language and skills while completing real-life tasks. Ở đây thì mình có giải thích tiếng Việt một chút nhé. Ở trong ESP thì các bài học không phải là các bài tập bình thường mà được thiết kế giống thực với ngoài đời. Thứ nhất là người học sử dụng các tài liệu thật như là email này, báo cáo này, bài học này, nên các học xong có thể được dùng ngay. Thứ hai là các nhiệm vụ giống tình huống thật trong học tập và công việc. Thứ ba là các bài học được thiết kế dựa trên nhu cầu của người học nên không học lan man. Ngoài ra thường thì là một nhiệm vụ thường dùng nhiều kỹ năng cùng lúc, ví dụ như là đọc, viết, nghe, nói. Người học tập trung vào hiểu và giao tiếp trước, còn ngữ pháp thì chỉ sửa khi cần. Kết quả là người học vừa giỏi kỹ năng, vừa cải thiện tiếng Anh một cách tự nhiên. Okay, so in conclusion, ESP integrates language and skill through meaningful tasks. Skills play a central role in course designs and tasks reflect real-life communications. This helps learners use English effectively in their specific academics or professional contexts. Okay, so my partner will continue presentations. Nguyễn Thị Kiều Anh, please.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about implication for teaching in ESP. Next slide, please. First of all, ESP is not simply general English teaching with a different label. It is a way of teaching English that helps learners use the language for specific academic or professional purpose. That means students are not learning English only to know the language in a broad sense. They are learning it because they need to perform real tasks in a real fields such as tourism, engineering, nursing, or law. Because of that, teaching decisions in ESP cannot be made in a general or random way. They must be closely linked to learner needs and to the target use of English. So when we teach ESP, we need to ask questions like this. What will learner do with English in their future workplace or academic setting? What kinds of text will they read? And what kind of interaction will they take part in? What language and skill do they really need? From this perspective, ESP has important implications for three key areas: syllabus design, material selection, and classroom activities. Next slide, please. So why this implication matters? Because ESP is learning central and needs driving. In other words, the contents and the teaching methods should be based on the learner reason for learning. This is why ESP course design usually begins with needs analysis. Needs analysis is important because it helps teachers identify what learners need in order to function successfully in a particular context. For example, the needs of nursing students are very different from those of hotel staff or mechanical engineering students, even though all of them are learning English. the communicative situation they face are not the same. So ESB teaching should respond not only to learner needs, but also to target communicative situation and the expectation of particular discord communities. That means we are not teaching language in isolation. We are teaching language as it is actually used by people in specific profession or academic disciplines. Ở đây thì mình sẽ giải thích tiếng Việt một chút. Đó là cái phân tích nhu cầu này thì rất là quan trọng bởi vì là tưởng backslide please. Bởi vì là cái việc dạy ESP này nó sẽ giúp cho giảng viên xác định xem là người học cần gì để có thể hoạt động hiệu quả trong một bối cảnh cụ thể. Ví dụ như vừa nãy mình đã đưa ra các ví dụ như là nhu cầu của sinh viên ngành điều dưỡng thì sẽ rất khác với nhu cầu của nhân viên trong lễ tân khách sạn hay là các bạn sinh viên ngành cơ khí. Dù là cùng học tiếng Anh nhưng mà trong những tình huống giao tiếp khác nhau thì họ sẽ phải đối mặt với với những hoàn cảnh rất là khác nhau. Do đó mà cái việc mà dạy ESP này không chỉ phải đáp ứng nhu cầu của người học mà còn phải thực sự phù hợp với các tình huống giao tiếp đích và là những yêu cầu của từng cộng đồng diễn ngôn chuyên môn. Hay là nói một cách khác là khi chúng ta dạy ngôn ngữ như một hệ thống tách rời thì chúng ta không được dạy ngôn ngữ như một hệ thống tách rời mà chúng ta phải dạy ngôn ngữ như là nó thực sự được sử dụng trong từng ngành nghề hoặc là lĩnh vực học thuật cụ thể. The next slide, please. Okay. Let I take the example of hotel front desk ESP. If we design the syllabus only around grammar items such as the present continuous or modal verbs, the course may look organized, but it may not actually prepare learners for their jobs. A front desk employee does not go to work thinking, today I will use modal verb. Instead, that person has to greet guests politely, handle check-in and check-out, respond to requests, show complaint, and give direction clearly. So the ESB syllabus should include those communicative tasks directly. For example, students may learn how to welcome a guest in a professional tone, how to ask for booking details, how to explain hotel policies, or how to respond when a guest says, the air conditioner in my room is not working. In that case, language is taught through job-related communication. Students may still learn useful grammar, such as polite requests with could or would, but the grammar is embedded in a meaningful task, so the syllabus become a roadmap of professional communication, not just a list of language forms. Next slide, please. ESP trains material selections. The second implication is material selection. ESP material should reflect the target communicative situation as closely as possible. This means learners should work with text, genres, and communicative practice that are relevant to their field. When selecting alternative materials, teacher needs to pay attention to many things: the topic, the genre, the audience, the register, as well as the grammar and vocabulary in the text. In ESP test is especially important because students need to practice with material that resemble what they will actually meet outside the classroom. Next slide, please. For example, in engineering ESP, it is often not allowed to give students short, simplified reading passages that are written only for language practice. Instead, students should work with materials such as merchant manuals, technical diagrams, and incident report. Why are these materials most useful? Because they present the kinds of text engineer or technician may really have to read and use. A merchant manual teaching students how to follow procedure step by step. A technical diagram helps them connect language with visual information. An incident report shows them how problems are described formally and accurately in a professional setting. Then students can use this material to carry out meaningful tasks. They may interpret procedure, identify problems in a machine, explain a technical process to a partner, or diagnose a possible fault based on a diagram or report. So the material does not only teach vocabulary like pressure or alignment, it also helps students develop practical communication skill in their specialty. And that is why ESP material should support both specialist language knowledge and real communicative abilities. Next slide, please. The third implication is classroom activities. In ESP, activities should go beyond isolated during decontextualized exercise. They should reflect real workplace or disciplinary practice. Suitable ESP activities may include role plays, simulation, problem-solving tasks, case discussion, and joint-based tasks. These activities are useful because they bring learners closer to the kinds of communication they will actually perform. A good example is nursing ESP. One effective activity is a patient handover simulation. In a real hospital, a nurse often has to pass important patient information to another nurse clearly, quickly, and accurately. This is not just casual conversation. It is professional communication where mistake can have serious consequences. So in the classroom, students can listen to patient information, take notes, and then give a short handover to a classmate. This one activity integrates several skills at the same time, such as listening, speaking, note-taking, and specialist vocabulary. It also mirrors the pressure and structure in real nursing communication. Because of that, students are not only practicing English, they are also practicing how to communicate professionally in their future jobs. Next slide, please. All of these implications so that ESP is both purpose-driven and context-specific. ESP begins to with the learner reasons for learning, and it provides what is needed for successful participation in a particular field. A clear example of being purpose-driven in aviation English, pilots learn standard um, because the main purpose is safety and clarity. In that context, communication must be precise and unambiguous. There is very little room for personal style or figure language. ESB is also context-specific because language trains meaning across different fields. For example, in legal English, the word action does not simply mean movement. It often means a legal case or a lawsuit. So if teacher ignore context, students may misunderstand important meanings even if they already know the general word. This so that ESB teaching must always be responsive to the discourse community, the genre, and the communicative purpose of a specific field. It is focused, purposeful, and closely tied to reuse. Next slide, please. To conclude, understanding language and skill in ESP trains the way we teach in very practical ways. It sets syllabus design, material selection, and classroom activities. In ESP, teaching should always begin with learner needs and target communication. That is why ESP is both purpose-driven and context-specific. An effective ESP course does not simply help learners learn English in general. More importantly, it helps them use English appropriately, confidently, and successfully in real academic or professional setting. Next slide, please. And so next, my partner will be present.
Okay, so I will continue with the application part. For the application part, I use the example of the course English for Cross-Country Nursing by Susan Prosher. This course is taken from the book Introducing Course Design in ESP by Woodrow, and I will focus on analyzing three main points: the language needed, the skills prioritized, and how these influence teaching. According to the course description, the target learners are immigrant and international students preparing for a nursing program in the United States. The goal of the course is to support their success in nursing program through academic skills, discipline-specific language, and cultural content. So, even from the beginning, we can already see that there is a clear ESP context because the course is designed for a very specific group of learners with very specific academic and professional needs. Next, to answer the question, what language is needed? In this ESP context, the language needed is much broader than grammar alone. It can be divided into three main areas. First, students need specialized vocabulary, especially medical and nursing terminology, as well as abbreviations used in healthcare. Second, they need discourse or communicative language for professional tasks, such as therapeutic communication, interviewing patient, telephone and change of script reports, and documentation. Third, students also need context-specific language use. That means that their language must show clarity, accuracy, and empathy, and it must also be culturally appropriate in communication. And therefore, the language needed here is not only technical language, but also professional and context-sensitive language for real nursing situations. Next, about the skill. So the course shows clearly what skills are prioritized for specific purposes. First, reading is important because students need to read textbooks, journal articles, charts, and graphs. Then writing is also essential because they have to produce academic papers and use skills such as paraphrasing, quoting, and APA referencing. Listening is prioritized through nursing lectures, taped reports, and note-taking practice. And the last but not least, speaking is significant because students need therapeutic communication, interviewing skills, participation in class, and group discussions. Also, confidence in oral presentations. Next, the language and skills are integrated. A key strength of this course is that language and skills are integrated. Students read authentic nursing text while expanding their nursing vocabulary. They write discipline-related papers while learning how to use outside sources appropriately. They listen to lectures and reports and then practice note-taking. Students also develop oral communication for clinical interaction through tasks such as therapeutic communication and interviewing. This means that the course combines content knowledge, language use, and skill performance in one learning process. In this case, the course teaches English through meaningful nursing-related tasks rather than through isolated language practice. And next, how do these needs influence teaching? Because the learner's needs are so specific, they directly influence teachings in several ways. First, in syllabus design. The course is organized around nursing topics, skills, and learning strategies. Second, in materials selection. The course uses nursing textbooks, journal articles, lectures, reports, charts, and also graphs. Thirdly, in classroom activities, students practice reading strategies, note-taking, paper writing, oral presentations, and therapeutic communication practice. Finally, in assessment, the course uses tests, quizzes, papers, journals, presentations, and an exercise folder. So this course shows clearly that in ESP, learner needs influence not only what is taught, but also how the course is designed, delivered, and also assessed. And overall, this is a strong ESP application for several reasons, in my opinion. It is built from needs analysis. It is centered on language skills and professional tasks. It combines academic demands and clinical communication. It includes cultural issues, not only technical language. And finally, it shows ESP as purpose-driven and context-specific. So this course clearly illustrates language and skills in ESP in practice. It shows that in ESP, language teaching should be based on what learners really need in their academic and professional context. And this is all of our presentation today. Thank you for listening.